Single Family Design Board. This is a special session for November 28th, 2022. May I have roll call, please?
Okay, here we go. Chair Miller,
Here?
Vice Chair Kalas,
Here.
Board Member Anderson,
Here.
Board Member Arkelian,
Here.
Board Member Klein.
Here.
We have a quorum, thank you.
All right, thank you. Going to general business, public comment. Any member of the public may address the board for up to 2 minutes on any subject within its jurisdiction that is not scheduled on this agenda for a public discussion. Do we have anyone that would like to speak? Right.
Okay. So for anyone in the audience, you can speak just regarding general public comment. And Ms. Gu, can we please check Zoom for any raised hands?
Checking Zoom, I do not see any raised hands for general comment. Thank you.
Okay. we will close general public comment.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to item B, approval of the minutes of the Single Family Design Board for November 21st, 2022. Can we go through those items, please?
Item 1, 1218 Shoreline Drive. Received project design approval and was continued indefinitely to consent with comments and the required findings. Item 2, 425 Allen Road. I was here for a one-time pre-application, so there were various comments from board members. Item 3, 639 Island View Drive. Was continued for project design approval to date certain of December 5th at the consent level. A discussion was held. Item 4, 1337 Cliff Drive was continued indefinitely with the following comments. This concludes the meeting minutes.
All right, I have a comment with that one project before the last one that's going to the consent. Because I believe I'll be doing consent. Can I review that project, even though I didn't see it initially, but I did see it for the full board at the last meeting?
Yeah, you can review previous meeting minutes, the video on YouTube as well, and I can email that to you.
Yeah,
for-
if you
for
could, that'd be great.
access. Yeah.
All right, thank you. Okay, may I have a motion for approval, please?
Can I
Move.
make, I think,
Sure,
I
yes.
think comment 8 under item 2 needs to be cleaned up, for lack of a better way of putting it. The use of high-quality materials appreciated, as well as the use of Spanish-style architecture to connect with the existing residents. That's fine, but the rest of that sentence is, it says, however, the proposed simplified design could be considered too simplified. Maybe I misread it to begin with. I'll take back my comments.
Okay. That's all right. Did I get a motion for approval, please?
I'll move.
May I have a second?
Second.
Can I have a roll call, please?
Okay, here we go. Chair Miller,
Yes?
Vice Chair Kalas,
Yes.
Board Member Anderson,
Yes.
Board Member Arkelian,
Yes.
Board Member Klein.
Yes.
The motion passes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to item C, approval of the consent calendar for November 28th, 2022. Can we go through those items, please?
Yes. A, 648 Ricardo Avenue. Received final approval with the comment that the project plans demonstrate substantial conformance. Item B, 3236 Laurel Canyon Road. Received approval of review after final with the following comment. Item C, 121 Via del Cielo. Received project design approval and final approval with the comments and required findings. That concludes the meeting minutes.
All right, thank you. Do I have any comments or comments on the projects? I notice you're, Leslie.
Was 648 Ricardo Avenue the one that we had comments made previously about the dark exterior color?
Yes, and they did bring a lighter color.
Okay, thank you.
They did. So, yes, okay. May I have a motion for approval, please?
I'll move.
May I have a second?
I'll second.
All right, can I have a roll call, please?
Here we go. Chair Miller,
Yes?
Vice Chair Kalas,
Yes.
Board Member Anderson,
Yes.
Board Member Arkelian,
Yes.
Board Member Klein.
Yes.
The motion passes. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. So moving on to item D, announcements, requests by applicants for continuances and withdrawals, future agenda items, and appeals. Do we have anything like that?
Yes, Chair Miller, board members, we do have an announcement here from Ms. Tess Harris.
Great.
Thank you, board members. It's nice to be with you all today. I'm Tess Harris. I'm the State Street Master Planner for the City of Santa Barbara, and I'm here to share an announcement for some of the upcoming events that we have, as well as a survey. So we do have a survey that's live until mid-December. If you go to the website at statestreet.santabarbaraca.gov, it's our first survey for the project. I really hope that all of you and all the members of the public here will take it. We also have a couple design workshops coming up on Friday, December 9th and Saturday, December 10th. We have one geared towards design professionals on Friday morning from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. I'm happy to share that information further. And then we have general community workshop events that same evening from 4 to 7 p.m. on Friday, Saturday 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. And then an open house from 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. on that Saturday that will showcase all of the different workshop designs that we've come up with. There'll also be an art show at this space. It'll be at 821 State Street, the former Sur La Table building. So we'll have an art show in conjunction with the Arts Fund, and then childcare will be provided during the workshop events for the general community. I've got flyers I'll leave out here as well, but just wanted to make all of you aware, and I hope to see you. Thanks so much.
Great, thank you very much.
One other quick announcement, Chair, board members. On Monday, we will be seeing 1269 Farello Road project, and the applicant has installed voluntary story poles, so we please encourage you to take a look, drive by, check them out. They'll be there through Monday, is my understanding.
Okay, thank you.
And
That's-
Mr. Chair, if I could
Yeah.
make one more announcement. So as you know that I recently went to council and they approved ordinance amendments to Title 22, updating the SFDB membership and quorum requirements. And so that goes into effect tomorrow. So today, quorum is 4 people with a licensed architect. And it still stands just business as usual, but starting tomorrow, quorum will only be, we have designated 5 people on the SFDB, and it will just need to be a simple majority to grant a project approval. So that would go down to 3 people. And there's no, it doesn't have to be a particular makeup of the 3 people who can constitute quorum. So that goes into effect for the next meeting on Monday.
All right, great, thank you very much. Okay, I don't believe we have any subcommittee reports, is that correct?
We may have an issue, sorry.
Sure.
On the quorum today on the last item, since I thought it was a new project and Leslie's leaving
Oh, the last item?
on our agenda today.
So I'm going to recommend, because this does happen from
Yeah.
time, so I think that there is a provision within the Brown Act when, let's say, a licensed architect has to step down for some reason, or if there's something. So I can check in with the city attorney, but I think we can go ahead and proceed, and I'll get
Okay.
more information on that.
All right, great, thank you very much. Okay, moving on to item number 1. I believe it's 229 Vista Del Mar Drive. This is a continued item. Their project design approval and final approval is requested. Proposal to construct a 2-story, 1,200 square foot detached accessory dwelling unit, including a 200 square foot covered deck and a 200 square foot second floor deck associated with an existing 1-story, 1,920 square foot single unit residence and an attached 446 square foot garage located in the Hillside Design District and non-appealable jurisdiction of the coastal zone. Landscape screening is proposed. Staff hearing officer approval of a coastal development permit was granted on March 23rd, 2022. The proposal total of 3,566 square feet of a development on a 27,230 square foot lot is 75% of the maximum guideline for the lot area ratio. Again, project design approval and final approval is requested. Neighborhood preservation findings and Hillside Design District and slope lot findings are required. The project was last reviewed on October 24th, 2022. Can we read into the record the minutes of the previous meeting, please?
One, the proposed size, bulk, and scale is still out of proportion with the existing home. 2, study lowering the plate heights. 3, the board appreciates the roof lines matching the existing home. However, study relocating the existing structure further back on the property. 4, the board appreciates the new structure matching the materials on the existing home for a more matched appearance. 5, study the size and shape of the tree selection to be larger in the front and more column-like along the property line in order to improve the screening for the adjacent neighbors. 6, study reducing the second story so that the scaling of the second floor ties in better with the existing home and to blend the aesthetics and enhance the neighborhood.
All right,
There were
thank
some
you.
individual board comments as well. Oops.
Okay, there's a lot of issues with this project. If you could introduce yourself and tell us how you address those motions, that'll be great.
Sure thing. My name is Kevin Moore, architect for the owner, and I can just go through those motion points,
Okay.
point by point.
Great.
So number 1, the proposed size bulk.
Oh, hold on, Kevin. Our screens are off. Oh,
It's kind of hidden
Sorry.
underneath there. Yeah.
okay.
Are we
Sorry.
ready?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so number 1, concerns about the proposed size, bulk, and scale being out of proportion with the existing home. Okay, so let's take a look at the neighborhood quickly. So the project site is here. All of these red outlined properties are either fully second story, have full second stories or partial second story additions on them. And I want to draw your attention to these 3 here. So this is within the immediate neighborhood. This is the context. This is the way that second story additions have been done in the past. And this is within the immediate neighborhood, walkable to these sites. And when we look at the single family design guidelines, page 41, this type of addition appears as one of the preferred styles of massing. So I have this, if the camera wants to show that.
Okay.
If we can.
Can't,
They're magicians. They can make it happen.
just don't show my bald head.
So there on the bottom, that is one of the preferred second story addition options there. And if we look back then at what's occurring in the neighborhood, that's pretty consistent with what the design guidelines show. So if we could flip back to the plan set, please. Thank you. So again, second story mass projecting out above the existing single story area. There's a good example of that. This one is set back. This one is not. Brought right to the face of the house, existing house. And then other examples of, much larger mass on the second floor. And, here's another example. It happens to have some nice screening trees in front. And so if we take a look at our page, let's see, move to page 16 here. If we take a look at the street elevation, which is this up top here, you can see that there is the single-story existing home, and in all likelihood, this would appear as a second-floor addition to the back of the existing residence. So I believe that we are very close to being in compliance with the design guidelines on that point. And I think with the addition of the large trees in the front yard for screening, that this will appear as a single structure. Okay, number 2, study lowering the plate heights. So what we did is we went back and we looked at the existing house as the chair suggested and document that more fully. So what we found was that The existing house has a raised foundation, so it's already, approximately 18 inches above, above grade. So with the addition of the plate height, our proposed plate height being here is actually lower than the existing plate height of the house. So we've gone to a 8'6" plate on the ground floor, and at the tallest point to create this offset roof detail, we have a 9-foot plate here. In the front, facing the street, come on. We have that 8'6" at the ground floor, and then it actually goes to an 8-foot plate on the front portion of the house, of the ADU. So all of this results,
Is that dash line what it used, there you go.
yeah, this was the original design that you saw first. So you can see we've come down
Yeah.
dramatically. So all of this results in, come on back up, there we are. A ridge line, a maximum ridge line, which is fairly short, which is just over 7 feet above the existing ridge line of the house. So it's really kind of nestled in there and tucked down as far as we think we can get it to go while including this detail of the stepped roof, which is what you see around the neighborhood. Okay, so number 3, the board appreciates the roof lines matching the existing home. However, study relocating the existing structure further. Study relocating the ADU, I think is what you meant to say, structure further back on the property. So if we flip to the site plan. So we provided a dimension this time around. So we're 33 feet, over 33 feet from the front yard or the front property line here to this lower corner. So this is a single story element on the ADU. And then an additional, 3 or 4 feet to the second floor corner here. So we're quite a ways back from the front property line to begin with, and we're behind the existing structure. We did study moving this ADU back in this direction. However, when we spoke with the neighbor, this neighbor who lives here to the south, his concern was that the farther back this goes, the more it will creep into his views of the mountains. So he right now is able to kind of look this way and see the mountains. So further back that goes, the more it impacts his view. Additionally, the further back it goes, the more it potentially becomes more visible to more people, for instance, down below. So it would have a greater impact on more people if it was moved further back. Okay, number 4, the board appreciates the new structure matching the materials of the existing home. That hasn't changed. Number 5, study the size and shape of the tree selection to be larger in the front, more column-like along the property line in order to improve the screening. So what we've done is revamped our proposal here to include a coast live oak, a fairly large specimen tree that we could land in the front yard here. And this would do the bulk of the work for screening this portion, I think, of the ADU. And then we have a smaller olive tree next to that, which will help fill in some of that space. And then we've included a stenocarpus here in this little pocket. And these have, they're generally more vertical. They're, and it feels like it fits that space well. So I think that's going to do a good job of providing some buffer between the neighbor and this area. And then again, we didn't want to increase and add a large tree in this area that, just in case that would impact the neighbor's views of the mountains beyond. But in speaking with the neighbor, our property owner is willing to construct this new fence and maintain the drainage along here to help shore up this slope that comes down into their backyard. Okay, and then 6, study reducing the second story so the scaling of the second floor ties in better with the existing home and to blend the aesthetics enhance the neighborhood. So right now, we've got on the second floor, there's 530 square feet. And we've compressed the bedroom sizes, so they're pretty tight as is. We've really, you can see this front bedroom, the closet really got squished down to make all this work. So there isn't a lot more that we can pull out of that area. So we also looked at, well, what happens if we move some of that to the ground floor? And what we encountered was that would likely, well, let's go to the site plan. Oops. That would likely require additional ground floor area in this zone, which would essentially take more of the mass and extend it more along the side yard setback, which I think is less preferable for the neighbor to have less house, because currently right now there's just this point along this side yard setback, and then the bulk of the house is falling away from that property line. So I don't think it would result in any real difference for the neighborhood. There would still be a second floor element. The neighbor would have a little bit more impact and mass against their property line. And then we also just wanted to share, those are the 6 points that you came up with from the motion. And we just wanted to share the updated views here of the. So here you can see with the trees roughly sized as they will grow out to be. You can see that really does buffer that side. And from this view, the project is very similar to other second story additions prevalent in the neighborhood. And from this view, we even had to reduce or make this tree transparent to be able to really see what was going on behind it. So you can see this from this angle, these trees will really hide the perceived gap between the two structures, and I think it'll read as a single structure that looks very similar to other houses that have had second floor additions. So that concludes my presentation.
All right, thank you very much. Did we get public comment, please?
Thank you. Ms. Gu, can you please switch to my screen? Chair Miller, board members, we did receive written correspondence on this item that was distributed prior to the hearing from 2 people. And then for those attending on Zoom, and if you wish to make oral public comment on this item, you can do so now by selecting the raise your hand icon. Staff will call on you and you can unmute yourself. So while we're waiting for those on Zoom, we can turn to the in-person public comment. So I've received a few slips here, 4 speaker slips, and if anyone else would like to make oral public comment, feel free to fill out a speaker slip and provide it to us. I'll call you up one by one. You'll have 2 minutes to speak. Please press on the base of the mic to light up green and just announce yourself. And again, you'll have 2 minutes. So Cecilia, if you'd like to come up first, please. Yep, it's on. And please
Cecilia
announce
Bock.
yourself.
I'm opposed to this apartment building in the back of this yard. There's not one in the whole complex where we live, Allen Road, Vista Del Mar, They're all attached to the house, and this is going to negatively affect our families, our children, and our elderly. And this doesn't belong in our neighborhood. If you go over to Yankee Farm, they have big lots there. You drop this apartment building there, nobody notices. But you do that in our neighborhood, it doesn't fit, and I think we all know that. So I would say let's just get the ADU attached to the house the way it should be, like it is in our neighborhood everywhere. That's what everyone's doing. It's attached to the garage, it's attached to the house, but it's not dropped apartment building in the backyard. It just doesn't belong in our neighborhood. There's not that kind of room there. And it's the wrong thing to do. And I'm asking the board not to allow this to pass, but let's get an ADU attached to the house, because that's what's right in this situation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker will be Paul, please.
Before my
After-
time starts, would it be helpful, it would be helpful to have that site plan that showed the new screening on, so I could refer to it, because I was going to comment on it anyway. The one with the trees, I think it's with the new trees, or it doesn't matter, really. Okay. All right, that's fine. But first, I want to remind you that this is,
Excuse me, could you identify yourself for the record, please?
yeah, it's Paul Margolis. I just want to remind you, this is a 21-foot structure,
And do
maybe
you
a
live
little,
in the neighborhood, sir? I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, what?
Where's,
I am the neighbor that has been referred to. I'm the southerly neighbor.
perfect, thank you.
It's 21 feet plus, approximately 21 feet, plus the 5 or 6 feet of elevation difference. It's going to be 26 feet plus above our property, standing 4 feet from our property line. It runs along a driveway extension and the southern, or the side of my house. So you're correct, moving it back more than a couple of feet is going to start affecting my view of the mountains. So that's one thing. On this site plan, I wanted you to see that the existing tree that I think is a big Chinese elm is quite large and is what would screen that project from my backyard. And right now from my backyard, we don't see anything. We see our views, we don't see the neighbor. And I wanted to have some protection that that tree doesn't get cut down, because I think one of the reasons for having this two-story structure is that he's going to have amazing ocean views. And that tree is going to be blocking those ocean views from bedrooms or the balcony that's there. And it's a quite large tree, and it screens everything now and doesn't let us see his house. And I don't want that tree to be cut down. So if there's any protection against future cutting down, because that's what I would see happening as soon as the project's done. And then we lose our screening, because the other screening is going to take quite some time to grow in. It's tough to get anything to grow there anyway, especially live oaks. I've tried, can't do it. It's been years. We can't get them to grow. And those are my requests.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have N. Gardner. After that, we'll have Jeff Harris.
Hello, I'm Norm Gardner. I live at 225 Vista Del Mar, just the north end neighbor. All of this discourse this afternoon, I know you've seen me up here before, seems to be about disguising this building you're going to put up. And I'd like to disguise it as well, but it's there. So On the one hand, you're building this thing, and on the other hand, you want to disguise it. It sounds a little silly to me. Anyway, I appreciate the work you guys do. I don't think you're in a position to do much about my problem, which is mainly property value. I have a problem with the property value. My real estate agent tells me that I'm going to lose 5 to 15%, depending on how many people go into the dormitory. And as you've said, the rooms are small. They're small for a reason, to get a number of people in there to maximize the dollars, and I appreciate that. No fault to the architect, no fault to the owner, but it's impacting me. And I'm going to find a way so that it doesn't impact me. Thank you.
Thank you. Jeff Harris, please. After that, we'll have Juliana.
Hi, Jeff Harris, 167 Vista Del Mar. So I live about 8 houses west or uphill from this property. I've lived there since 1989. When I bought my house, it's essentially like the house that's on that lot now. I am one of those 2-story homes that he referenced. And the difference between what we did and what's going on now is we remodeled in 1995. We'd already become a part of the neighborhood. And we took being a good neighbor into consideration with what we did. I have immediate neighbors here. You know, I made sure what I built wasn't something that was going to impede on their quality of life. What's missing from this project, in my opinion, is I don't think that the current owners are worried about being good neighbors. It's an investment for them. And as the neighbors that, like I said, have been there since 1989, if I was better at math, I'd tell you how many years that's been. I'm going to probably retire there. And these changes that are occurring aren't taking that into consideration. The people that live on that block, which, by the way, we're an isolated little neighborhood. We don't have the option of, oh, shoot, there's 7 more cars parking on the street, and I know this isn't your area. Let's go park on the next street. There is no next street. We're a steep hill, one of the steepest in all of Santa Barbara, with nowhere to go. So when those streets are full, if a neighbor has a party, you can't have one the same day because there's nowhere to park. I don't know what's going to happen with that, and I know that's not your area. I just want it on record. But more importantly, I want the good neighbor feeling about this, that they're taking that into consideration, and I don't feel like they are. So I oppose the project. Thank you.
Last speaker, Juliana. Please state your full name for the record.
Juliana Cada. You are aware that our neighborhood does not have any 4-bedroom apartment buildings. I sent in pictures of the cliff. I don't know if you guys got a chance to review that. I hope you got to see those. The geology of the property is such that the only buildable part of this lot is the spot that he's got it on. It can't be moved back because the geology won't allow it. I don't know if you can put up the pictures when you get a chance, but it's just, falling down, and the neighbors below are very concerned about the cliff falling down. This project is too big for the buildable area, I just said that, and does not fit into the size or the design or the scale of what we already have currently existing. And the mass of this, even though it's not in your purview to be talking about cars, but the whole thing will be spilling out into the street, so that really is the scale, size, and bulk of the project going, out into the whole neighborhood. So that's really going to affect us. I'm going to not be able to drive that way because it's a blind curve and we're going to have head-on collisions. And that's my main concern, is that. This needs to be built in a commercial zone, not a residential zone, because this is an apartment building. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. This project really needs to be denied or scaled in half. And that's what I think. Thank you.
Thank you. Just checking, anyone else in the audience wishing to make public comment on this item, you can do so at this time. Seeing none. Ms. Gu, do you see any raised hands on Zoom?
On checking Zoom, I do not see any raised hands.
Okay.
Thank you.
This concludes public comment for this item. Back to you.
All right, thank you. Before I bring it to the board for questions, there's a few comments or things I'm going to say to address from the speakers, and I really, you guys need to understand this, that the issues you brought up, the parking, the legality of the zoning, the calling it a hotel, these are laws that were passed that by people that are not in this room. None of us have control over those requirements. The city staff, the architect, this review board, we don't have any purview as to the appropriateness of how this building is built, nor its use. Those were done by laws passed by Sacramento. And so your concerns are valid. I feel your frustration, but we cannot address them because they're not part of our purview. Who's the county supervisor down here? I went to a housing meeting. Who are the county supervisors? They're the one from down here. There's Doss Williams. That's it, Doss Williams. And I remember him saying at a talk, it was at the city library, and he said, who are we as a people in a moral sense if we don't allow housing? And I thought that was the weirdest thing for him to say, but that's kind of how politicians talk now, as if housing and real estate has a moral attachment to it. And it's especially strange in a community like us, because we're very unique in the fact that we're a very expensive, very attractive, people around the world want to live here, and it impacts us in a way very differently than how communities are impacted, such as Santa Maria or Bakersfield. So we have a whole different list of issues about this state of our town, especially with people like you that live in your neighborhood, that is far more valuable than if you had a neighborhood like this in Bakersfield. And what my point being is,
Careful, there's some expensive real estate in Bakersfield.
no, that's true. There is. I guess all cities have their positive points. My point being is the demographics of this city is unique, but there's no way we can control these laws. It's not our purview. But that's all I want to say about that. So our purview is size, bulk, and scale, and neighborhood compatibility, and that's pretty much the limit to what we can say about this particular project. With that being said, I'm going to bring it to the board for questions. So Vice Chair Kalas, do you have any questions, please?
I do. First couple of questions are for staff. So I'm understanding that a coastal development permit has already been issued for this project. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And so that can be issued in advance of our approval?
A land use approval comes before project design approval, before design review approval, because you need that underlying land use decision or approval before design can even be entertained.
Okay. This project is subject to hillside ordinance, is it not?
Correct.
Okay. And can you remind everyone in the room of what triggered the necessity for this ADU to come before our board?
So, I'm sorry. So this project kind of fell in the Bermuda Triangle of ADU legislation in that it received a coastal development permit, and it never came to the Single Family Design Board because at the time it fell under state code, and there's no design review component. It's all for accessory dwelling units. When the California Coastal Commission adopted our ADU ordinance, and that extends to the coastal zone, all applicants with existing permits down the pipeline were told if you don't have an issued building permit by the date that that law goes into effect, where ADU ordinance extends to the coastal zone, then it means that you're going to be subject to design review if it is triggered. Your question, Vice Chair Collas, is what about this project triggers? It's the two-story ADU that was part of the initial trigger. We have a checklist, a ministerial design checklist, that means that if an applicant proposes a design and it meets all the ministerial standards, then they just go right through to, they don't have to have any kind of discretionary hearing for design review, unless there's, again, a land use approval, but no design review. That ministerial criteria have to be objective, and architects and designers are not, don't always want to be placed in a box. You know, when you're designing something, you think about the site and different things, and so many projects don't meet the ministerial design criteria because the applicant, architect, owners have different wishes, or they might have different things that don't necessarily meet all of those standards. And so they have the option to come to design review and go through a discretionary process.
Okay, but specifically, just to clarify and truncate that, which was all great information, thank you. It is the second story that is triggering this.
Right.
So in other words, if Mr. Moore had come to the planning counter with a single-story ADU with a footprint in the same location, that would have been at a staff level approved, and it would have never come to this board. Presumably, like I'm simplifying
yeah.
it,
I
but
mean,
yes.
of course, we'd check all the standards, but yeah, it would probably meet the ministerial criteria.
Okay, thank you. And then one last question. So if for some reason, based on our guidelines or Hillside guidelines, if we cannot find that this is approvable, where does that put the applicant in the process?
So this applicant is requesting project design approval and final approval, which is generally a little bit odd, but he already had a complete set of drawings, detailed drawings through. And so because of permit streamlining, this board needs to take an action, and that their actions are: you can approve, you can grant PDA with an approval, you can deny PDA and state your reasons, you can approve something with conditions. Those are generally the options, but we can't necessarily keep kicking this down the line because of permit streamlining. So the last meeting where we were in October 24th, I think, I asked the applicant, that was the general direction, that he was willing to come back to share more information, and so we're kind of at our permit streamlining deadline. So today we really need a decision on the matter.
And if it's denied, where does this go? To Planning Commission
So
or City Council?
any decision of the Single Family Design Board, there's a 10-day appeal process that goes for anybody. Anybody can submit an appeal within that 10 calendar days, and then it would go to City Council for review, and so that it works just like every other appeal.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry to jump in there, but question for staff. If the applicant feels there's a possibility for some changes that could be made, can we, at our discretion, request a continuance?
So through you, Mr. Chair, and to the board and to the applicant, so we can grant, there's a one-time 60-day or 90-day extension that can be requested if there's, if something is worked out here and there needs to be design changes, but the applicant would need to agree to that for permit streamlining. So that is in our back pocket if that's comes to be.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so questions for the applicant. So Mr. Margulis had a comment about what he thinks is a Chinese elm. Can you point out the tree that you think he's referring to? It's the one at the rear.
That's this one.
Okay.
It's probably larger than it's shown here on the plan.
Okay. And that is intended to remain,
Yes.
right? Okay.
It's actually one of several reasons this is a two-story structure.
Okay. Do you have an arborist report in regards to the health of that tree?
No, but it seems perfectly healthy and happy where it is.
Okay. Let's see. Can you, Mr. Moore, can you just articulate exactly how far you've dropped the ridge from the original plan that we had reviewed, or the original elevations that we reviewed? I know you showed that with that dashed line, but can you just enumerate what that delta is for us?
Certainly. So you can see the original design just had a single ridge line, and at the front of the ADU, it's dropped 4'6.5" At the rear, about 3'2".
Okay, and the overall height now at the southerly wall,
So there's sort of this.
not the southerly wall of the balcony, but I would say maybe where that note reference 11A 9.01 is, that wall is the one I'm looking for an elevation on.
This, so from existing grade to the ridge is just over 20 feet here in this line. To this eave, I don't have that documented, but it's, 3 or 4 feet lower.
Yeah, it'll drop a little bit, sure. Okay, and then would you agree with Mr. Margolos's assessment that there's about a 5 to 6 foot elevation drop between properties, his property and your client's property?
It varies, but somewhere in there, 4 to 5 feet, I would say.
Okay. You made a statement in your presentation that when you were looking at possibly relocating some of the square footage to the lower level, that you just couldn't do that, and I'm summarizing here, so bear with me, that you couldn't do that, or you would end up creeping closer to the common property line with Mr. Margolis in more areas than just that one, I'll call it, pinch point. I'm looking at the site plan, if you zoom out just a tick, and I'm thinking about how this big Chinese elm masks things and the views from Mr. Margolis's property, and it still seems to me like more square footage could be at the back side of this on a first-story level without impeding his mountain views, given the arm's width on this tree as well as the back point of his residence. Did you consider putting any of the square footage on the back on a first floor level?
Well, we actually did, based after our first review, we did move I'd say 150 square feet downstairs. We downsized the upper floor and moved about 150 square feet downstairs.
Okay. And then you said that you had sort of squeezed the second floor. Do you know how many square feet you lost off the second floor since your last presentation to the board? You said you're at roughly 530 right now?
That, the second floor area hasn't changed from our last review.
Okay.
The rooms were already that size.
Okay. Those are my only questions. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Board Member Anderson, do you have any questions, please?
Jeez, yeah, a lot of information here. So the height of the ADU is 21.6 to the ridge. The existing ridge height on the existing residence is approximately X feet, just so we know the difference there.
I don't have
7,
that.
8 feet lower.
Yeah, it's a little over 7 feet lower
Okay.
than that.
And the materials on the ADU and the existing house, just could you review the
Sure.
vertical siding that you have? Is that the board and bat to match the existing house?
Correct. So the existing house has a vertical board and bat on the garage to the entry, and then transitions to have a detail with, I guess you would call it sort of a belly board of some sort there with stucco below it. And then it's stucco for the remainder. Our proposed palette is very similar, a vertical board and bat with a stucco base, with a similar belly band detail.
And are you planning any new paint on the existing house that matches the new ADU, or the roofing is new and the existing house is old? Or is there any improvements on the exterior materials to the existing house to tie it in with the ADU?
The colors will match.
So
The
that's
roofing will match.
So are you changing the existing roofing on the existing house? Or are you
No.
painting the new house?
The house has been painted, and this ADU will match that.
Okay. So I don't know if this is a question for staff, but it was a public comment, and it is a comment that I would look at as an architect, and that is the buildable area of the lot. I think the buildable area of the lot is closer to like 13,000 feet. You know, if you look at where it drops off, and then you start to consider the adjustment of the FAR. And, you know, to try to understand the lot and where the ADU is being placed, and to justify the 1,200 feet, I start to do that kind of work.
Mr. Chair, through you to Board Member Anderson, that the FAR is a specific calculation in our municipal code, and it starts off with square footage of the lot, and so that number, it's a specific formula for each and every property. I know that there's a difference in how you might look at it, but in terms of FAR, I just want to put that in context.
Understood, right. So in reality, though, to me, the FAR is a lot higher when you look at the area of the lot that is in the neighborhood. So I guess I don't have a question there, but besides Kevin, did you consider the buildable area and of the lot in regards to
Well,
the size of the ADU?
I suppose you could look at it that way, but that's not the way the code is written. And you could look at many other lots and say, well, this lot has a lot of mature trees on it, therefore we should not take that area into account as far as the lot size. I don't think that would be a fair thing to base a decision on.
Okay, well, the ADU is, you know, lot area justifies your 1,200 versus your 850 square foot, and that's my concern. So just trying to get some more clarification on that.
Just pipe in here, does that have something related to the fact that it's attached as opposed to detached, according to state law?
Yes, so if you, this is according to our local zoning code. So it's my understanding if you attach an ADU to a residence, you're limited to the maximum size of that ADU being 50% of the existing square footage.
That's correct.
Yep. Did that help you answer?
Oh, yeah, I know all that.
Okay. All right.
It's more lot area and size of the ADU. To me, that was the main concern, so thank you for answering that.
Okay, thank you. Board Member Arakalian, do you have any questions, please?
No questions.
Board Member Klein, do you have any questions, please?
No questions.
Okay, I have a couple, So, state law, and you bring up a point about the difference between it being attached as opposed to being detached. And you could help me here too, as the advantage of it being detached was you could have a larger ADU. And in the spirit of the law, that was passed to encourage more housing. So, and you're kind of caught between a rock and a hard place, because there was a point when you first initiated this project that it didn't even go before design review. It would have been exempt. So there is a emphasis or a pressure in Sacramento to eliminate design review boards altogether, especially in affluent communities. I keep bringing this up because that's the background context of where this is all coming from. But the cities are starting to fight back and bring in and introduce municipal ordinances so that the local community has more control over the development of their neighborhoods. And you're right, caught in the middle of it. So you're doing everything legally correct. And the question I have for the city, and kind of a follow-up to what Board Member Kalas said, if we were to deny this, we're technically breaking the law, the California state law. Is that correct? I mean, has that been, I mean,
I disagree.
Well,
Because
no-
we are not saying
Well,
that you
no,
can't do an
stop.
ADU.
This is not your purview. It's like a city attorney issue.
Mr.
I'm just
Chair,
curious.
so, Mr. Chair, so there are different regulations for denying housing for multi-unit housing versus single residential units. And this is an accessory dwelling unit that's
Okay.
before you. I'm not an attorney, and I think that in terms of, I think your purview is to look and to and to be able to reflect on to what extent this project meets the findings, the neighborhood preservation findings. And I think that if that's really where the focus should be.
Right.
And I think we should, the legal conversation can come later and with the city attorney's office, and that really doesn't.
Well, I actually think it's kind of important because some neighbors have actually voiced that we should deny this project. So I want to make sure and clear that what kind of footing we have in terms of that.
I think that, that's the case every single day that you meet, that you have the ability to deny projects. And
Yeah, but this is state law. This is a little more complicated.
But we're applying a municipal code where the California Coastal Commission, the City Council has adopted an accessory dwelling unit law. So we're no longer under government code. We have a municipal ordinance that applies to this area, and that's what is being applied to this project. And so this applicant meets all of the municipal codes and has gotten a land use approval to meet the California Coastal Commission coastal policies. So all of those have been established, and through all of our zoning reviews, we've verified that this project meets all of the zoning standards. And so the things that, again, is up to you is the discretionary approval for the design of the accessory dwelling unit.
I'm just curious. Okay, all right, thank you. Appreciate that.
That's consistent with what I was going to say.
Okay, cool. All right. That was my only question, so I'll bring it back to the board for comments. Vice Chair Kalas, do you have any comments, please?
Yes, my comments would be, I'm trying to provide meaningful comments as opposed to just sort of a blanket statement that is, I think Mr. Margulis's request that a condition of approval to keep the large Chinese elm is reasonable. I think that I take a bit of exception, and I can understand, you're doing a really good job for your client, Mr. Moore. I understand the argument that you're trying to make in illustrating the two-story volumes on residences in the neighborhood and how it might apply here. But the simple fact is, I feel like you're sort of trying to have your cake and eat it too, which is, we want a detached ADU, but we want you to believe that it's gonna read like an attached second floor ADU. So I can't bite off both sides of that argument at the same time. I am concerned about the height of the structure as it relates to the southerly neighbor. I'm looking here in our guidelines, and on page 20C, it says, issues that the SFDB considers related to volume, mass, bulk, size, and scale include the following. How compatible is the structure's volume, bulk, and scale with those in the existing neighborhood and homes and structures? Well, there are no detached ADUs that are two-story in the neighborhood, so you happen to be the, the one paving the way. So we don't really have anything that we can compare that to. You've attempted to do that by showing us two-story additions to homes, but I don't think they're the same animal. We can consider second-story decks and how they relate to neighbors. I think that that's been addressed because the Chinese elm exists there, so I think I'm a little bit less concerned about privacy than I am about just sort of the overwhelming height of this relative to the southerly neighbor. We can consider second-story setbacks and how things are stepped back related to property line, wall sizes as it relates to human scale and adjacent parcels, and plate heights. And then the other thing that we can consider is hillside ordinance. And frankly, that is probably my biggest concern. I don't think that I can make a hillside, I don't think I can make a finding that this meets hillside design guidelines based on sort of the step-down criteria, which you're obviously familiar with, because of where this two-story volume is being placed and its relationship to how natural topography steps down. If you were proposing this second-story addition on the north side of the property, I would have less of an issue with that because of the way the street slopes down and the natural topography of the area. So those are my biggest concerns, even probably more so than an FAR number or the absolute square footage that we're looking at. It's more those items that I've enumerated.
Okay, Board Member Anderson, do you have any comments, please?
Yes. Difficult, so much information, but appreciate the reduced plate height and reduction in footage. I'm not on. I just, I go to the guidelines. Design is as important as size, and we're looking at size, bulk, and scale, and I honestly feel that the bulk of the two-story with the one-story detached is unbalanced, and it doesn't fit overall. With the neighborhood, the examples that you showed or had shown to respond to our review before were all attached and set back. They weren't up at the property line at the face of the existing residence or close to. So the placement of the ADU is concerning with the two-story volume. And that example you showed from the guidelines, to me, that is unbalanced. design when you just plunk the two-story on the garage. So I feel, and I'm struggling with the ADU enhancing the neighborhood as it's currently proposed. If we, you know, if it was pushed back and reduced in size or tied in, I mean, there's ways that we potentially could come up with a solution to, I feel, possibly move you forward. And I don't know if this is out of line, but trees are not permanent. And we're looking at the building. And we're looking at the landscaping, yes, but to me, you know, it could die tomorrow. So, anyways, those are my comments.
All right, thank you. Board Member, or Kayleen, do you have any comments, please?
I do. So I've been reading extensively on page 7 SP of our guidelines. You know, it's talking about the placement of a structure as if they belong on the site. And you know, when I see this detached ADU and you know it's an accessory dwelling unit and how it plays upon the existing residents, I want to commend the applicant for using quality architectural materials and tying in the materials of the existing property. I'm also concerned about, it's a concern, but it's not a requirement on my end, but it's a concern for me, a consideration on the placement of the structure. It's a detached structure, and I appreciate the other board members emphasizing its nature as detached. I think it would be evaluated differently as a two-story if it were attached. But I'm concerned about the placement, but I'm not. I appreciate the applicant with their study and reviewing our motion, and I would ask them to consider a different location, but not a requirement on my end. That's all I have. Thanks.
All right, Board Member Klein, do you have any comments, please?
Yes, I think the applicant has responded to the minutes really well. I appreciate also the significant size box trees. The trees are larger than normally I would see on a plan, so that is appreciated, and I think the species is also appropriate. Looking at the immediate neighborhood, as the applicant has shown us, there are second stories, and it seems compatible. And if you were to put the second story on top of the ADU, this doesn't seem to be the popular opinion up here, but it seems like it would be more visible from the street. And I also appreciate the applicant looking at the neighbor's views and placing the ADU appropriately as far as to not block mountain views. And I think also that there should be a condition to protect the Chinese elm in construction. So just typical tree protection in construction. Those are my comments.
All right, thank you. Correct me, Kevin, if I'm wrong. When your client first hired you and you submitted these plans, were you given, and you were given approval from the Coastal Commission, is that correct?
Mr. Chair, through you, it was the staff hearing officer that approves the coastal development permit that was required, and it's just an announcement.
It's just an announcement.
Correct. There was no public hearing associated with it.
But the owner had the impression that he was following all the rules of the time and doing everything correct. And at that time, those rules existed that he did not have to go before our board, right? So had those rules still been in place, this project would have been built without any design review.
Correct.
So I kind of bring that up because It's a weird situation, because I hear everything the neighbors are saying, which are important and critical, but this is one of those situations where, and I tend to agree with Board Member Klein. I think you've done everything possible to make it as unimpactful as possible. My inclination is that the plants in front mature, it's going to become less and less obtrusive, and it will look more like part of the house. We have no purview in terms of the parking impact. So, that's constantly being overlooked or simplified or ignored when these ADU projects come before us or any other board. So I'm going to kind of echo what Board Member Klein says in terms of this project. So those are my only comments. So they're here for design and final approval. I have a feeling that this board is not fully on board with the current situation, so I'm not sure how to go forward with this. If anyone has any ideas, let me know.
I'll make a motion for project design approval and final approval with the condition that the Chinese elm on the property be protected in construction, and that if any trees on the property that are new they should die to be replaced in kind. And I'd like to make the findings for project design approval. That the project is consistent with the scenic character of the neighborhood, as the applicant has shown multiple second stories throughout the neighborhood, and this project is set back from the front of the property, is compatible in size, bulk, and scale as it's set back as far as it can be from the front. And if it was to be moved further towards the slope, it would be more visible from that side. Quality architectural materials are being used to match what's the existing property. No trees are being impacted, and new trees are being added. The public health, safety, and welfare are appropriately protected. Good neighbor guidelines have been followed regarding privacy, additional landscaping, and working with the neighbor to prevent blocking of the mountain views to the south neighbor, and no public views are being impacted. The natural topography of the site is not being changed significantly, and the building scale works within the natural slope of the lot itself.
Okay, do I have a second? Do I have purview to have, I will second that motion. So can I have a roll call, please?
Okay, here we go. Chair Miller,
Yes.
Vice Chair Claus,
No.
Board Member Anderson,
No.
Board Member Arkelian,
Yes.
and Board Member Klein.
Yes.
Okay. There we go.
Was that a quorum?
And motion passes 3-2.
All right, thank you very much.
Chair Miller, if you could please announce the appeal
And there's a
process.
10-day appeal period for this project.
I appreciate everyone's time and taking a special meeting for
Thank you.
today.
Chair Miller, board members, do we need a break, or are we ready to
Yes,
proceed?
let's take a 5-minute break.
Okay.
Be back at 3:20. Okay, I'd like to reconvene the Single Family Design Board for on to item 2. This is a new item for concept review, 1509 Shoreline Drive. Proposal to demolish an existing 3,155 square foot single-story, single-unit residence, a 431 square foot attached garage, a partially demolished and an existing bluff-top accessory structure to abate violations in ENF 2015-01089 and construct a new 3,701 square foot, two-story, single-unit residence, including a 2,167 square foot basement and an attached 462 square foot two-car garage. Planning Commission review and approval is required to allow the proposed development in the appealable jurisdiction of the coastal zone and to allow a modification for overheight walls to encroach in the interior setback. A proposed total of 4,163 square feet of development on a 29,185 square foot lot is 87% of the maximum guideline for lot area ratio. No final appealable decision will take place at this hearing. Neighborhood preservation findings, hillside design district, and slope lot findings and grading findings will be required when the project is reviewed for project design approval. Welcome. If you can introduce yourself and show us your project.
Yes, I'm Tom Watson, your project architect.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Before we get too far, and I
Sure.
do want to do a staff introduction.
Oh, yeah, please. Thank you.
Sorry to interrupt, gentlemen. My name is Megan Arciniega. I'm the project planner assigned to this case. I've been on the case for several years. It's been a work in progress. As the project description states, if you can flip to that, the other screen. As the project description states, there's an enforcement case that's been going on that we're attempting to resolve. And it involves a structure that's been there for many years, for many decades. So it was initially put in the 50s, 60s, and has been evolved in construction since then. So if you can, yeah, that one's a good one. So this is the structure as it was in 2013. It's even more different than this today. It is the subject of our violation. One of the mods that was mentioned is overheight walls. So it's in part because the walls on the edge of that structure that kind of go into the bluff are 10 and 11 feet tall. And they're in the interior setback, right? They go all the way to the property line. And you can have fences, but they're overheight. So there's a modification needed for that. Oh, I should back up just a little bit. That structure was permitted, a rendition of it was permitted in the 80s, in 89, by the city, a coastal development permit. Since 89, and I can show you a photo from 89, what it looked like when it was permitted then. It was a wood structure. They've done a lot of improvements. Those improvements, as you can, materials, addition to the structure itself, understory, alterations, walls, different things, all of that has rendered that structure to be no longer permitted. So their new application has to essentially, it would need to permit that structure anew. The problem is coastal policies don't allow this type of structure. So they can't permit it anew. They have to change it to the best of their ability to meet coastal standards. And really, the ideal situation is all of it goes away, right? We just delete it from the bluff top. But of course, as we know, it's not as simple as that. We have geology at play, we have erosion at play, we have abutting properties that if you were to just remove that structure in whole, then you would create erosion on either side, perhaps. So we have the applicant has been working on extensive geological research to figure out what is the best treatment for this structure. It's going to be a combination of removal and retention, depending on how the geology plays out, which areas can be removed, which things need to stay for stability reasons. A lot going on there. So what the proposal is today, and it's part of the plans you'll be looking at, is a combination of keeping parts in place while removing as much as possible, lowering the walls, kind of doing some treatments to make it less visually obtrusive. So that's part of the package today. Know that that's a very big element. It's been It's being thoroughly vetted. The application is still incomplete, so it requires a coast development permit. It'll go to the Planning Commission. It's still incomplete because there's a lot of legwork in that geological element. In addition to this, we have a new property owner that's looking to develop the property as his own, right? So he needs to deal with the existing structure that he's inherited to the best of their ability, and then redevelop the property to meet their needs and in design. So there's this house, there's a pool and some other fences and stuff. Their vision is to do a remodel of the entire property. So you'll be looking at that house design today. If you have questions about it, I'm also here to answer those in terms of planning. But I just wanted to kind of address this first, so you guys kind of can see it, know what's even on the plans, because it's certainly unusual. And that's it.
All right, thank you very much.
I didn't get my name in there. Chris Gillen with Common Ground, landscape architect.
All right, thank you.
Good afternoon, Tom Oxner. I think this is on.
Oh, it is.
Good afternoon, Tom Oxner. There we go. So we were here prior, August 30th. I have extensive minutes from that meeting.
Yeah, I
Should we
saw
go
here.
through that? It was, the minutes were written on an individual basis, and there's quite a few of them. I could read them off, or you could read off the minutes, or however we want to proceed.
Well, I'm a little confused here.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, so they came previously for a one-time concept review, and that's non-binding comments. It's just for the benefit of the property owner to get feedback from your board.
Okay.
Because it's a pre-application, it's not, this is their first formal review
All right.
by your board. So staff doesn't think it's appropriate necessarily to go through the minutes from before, because it's not required that they address them.
Got it. So I would say to you, bring forward what you think is best.
It's my discretion.
Yes.
What I'd like to do is we really based this presentation based on the comments that we received from your last meeting. So I do think it's appropriate to go through them, and I'm going to go through them a bit briefly. There's a bit extensive, but I think it'll help bring us back to where we were when you're board, and I think most of you were here. I'll start here. Vice Chair Kalas said she could support the project without the detached garage, encourages that the applicant to study the westerly, well, maybe it's better if I go through the project a little bit and then come back to these. I think that might.
13 minutes and 34 seconds.
Okay, here we go. Hold on. So this is an aerial view. I think we've seen, there were some concerns about this view from this property looking towards the proposed structure. This is the existing structure to be demolished. We're proposing a new structure in a similar location but further back from the bluff. This is a aerial view of the house in the Glorietta, we call it, and then this is looking to the west, neighbor to the west. This is the neighbor to the east, and then this is a close-up. The pool goes away and the house goes away, and we're moving the entry to the center of the property. This is what it looks like from the street. That wall goes away, and we're proposing more of a typical neighborhood transparent wall from the sidewalk. This is the existing house from the north, and there it is again up close. There's another shot of it, and this is the south side of the house that's coming down, and then this is the lawn area between the house and that structure we call the Glorietta, and this is the deck of the Glorietta. That upper deck gets removed. Our proposal, and I'll show you in detail when we get to the plans, is to remove a good portion of this structure and leave just what's needed to support the bluff itself. We have several engineers looking at all the details associated with that, so I'm going to focus on just what you'll see as a net result of those alterations. These are the neighborhood. This is the house immediately to the west of our property, which doesn't go all the way through to the ocean, and they had some view concerns and more neighborhood residents, and I can come back to these photos if we need to. I'm going to move to the proposed plans. This is our civil plan. It's cut in half. It didn't fit on the page, but basically we've got an underground reservoir to collect the water. It's being pumped from all various portions of the site, and then from there it goes up onto the street. I can answer any questions on that as we move forward. This is just the civil drawings here. I can get back to that. Here, we have the site plan. So let's start addressing the comments from the last meeting. The last meeting, to sum up the comments, there were, this project was proposed at 100% FAR, and that included a detached 3-car garage, which was going to require a modification, as well as an attached 2-car garage, and we were at 100% FAR. So most of the board said that they couldn't support the additional accessory structure, and so we've decided to eliminate that structure. And now we're at 87% FAR. I think that was the universal comment that we received. The proposed house, as you can see here, it's being pushed back because of the bluff setback. We've adopted the bluff setback that was recommended to us by the city. And the grade of the house, the proposed grade is about a foot below the existing grade. Just to keep that in mind, we're playing around with the heights of this to try to make it consistent with the neighborhood. And I've researched some of the heights of the buildings in the neighborhoods, which I will get into at the time. The other big concern here, before I get into the Glorietta, was the second story. Basically, what we did was we redesigned the second story to move the structure to the east. So we have, I'll get to that, but that was a common thread through the comments of the last meeting. I've got a lot of sheets here for the Glorietta, so I'll kind of summarize these. But as you look at it, this is a 3-dimension of the Glorietta, and you can see in red that's what's coming out. So basically what we're doing is we're going to take out the structure here on the main level and the guardrails. So we're going to end up with just the podium level here, as well as there's an understory that will stay as well. But this whole structure goes, and this wall gets cut down. So I'm going to fast forward to some elevations. I think it's best to kind of get a straight-on elevation of the structure from the ocean side.
Those are pylons that I'm seeing.
Those are the caissons that
Caissons,
exist.
yeah.
So here we go. This right here is what you see right now. This south elevation is what you'd see if you were in the water looking at it. So you can see you've got this 9-foot retaining wall, you've got this structure here, and then you've got this small understory there. So we're going to remove the structure, cut this wall down. You can see there's a dashed line right here. So that wall gets cut down, and we introduce a slope behind it, landscape slope. So we feel that should really soften the impact of the structure, but still retain the essence of what's holding up that bluff. So now I'm going to zoom forward to the elevation of what you're going to see once these, I've got a few drawings here. There we go. So if you look at this proposed south elevation, you can see there's that cut wall. And you see on the sides here, we've got the high walls. That's what Megan was referring to in terms of the non-complying. But what we're able to do is to cut this down. There are tiebacks there, but our structural engineer is giving us the green light on that. So we feel like the impact of what you'll see from the public will be greatly diminished. This section here gives you an idea of that low wall and the slope we're introducing behind. And then, of course, the caissons and the basic of the underground will stay. So back to the house itself. So there's a full basement. We've got, let's see, this is the first floor plan, which basically stayed the same. But what we did was we eliminated, there was a covered terrace over here that went away, and of course the detached garage went away. We're at 87% FAR. This is the primary change that we made was to the second floor. So we pushed the second story mass away from the west property line, so it's now 20 feet from the west property line. It was 14. By moving the master suite over to the east side and condensing the second floor. So then that opens up more space between that property line and the second story structure. This is an elevation, and I could pull up the ones from the previous meeting, but the old second story was about right here. So that got moved over. The architecture got good reviews. It was really the exploring of the massing of the structure. There were comments on the height. So, and there was also a request to show what this might look like from the street. I don't recall who past that, but let me see if I can pull up. Okay, so here we go. So this, part of the existing wall is still there, but this is a kind of a rough idea, but it shows how it's set back from the street. So this is, there will be a semi-transparent wall here, and there's about 60 feet, or more than 60 feet from the edge of the sidewalk back to this structure. So you can see how, by the height of it relative to the house to the west, you can see how far it's pushed back. But the idea here is we dropped the height of the house down to 25.7 from 26 feet. Retaining the height on this is important given the particular needs of the clients. We've pushed the second story setbacks to be larger than what you'd see in the neighborhood. We've got 20 feet on the west and we've got 9 feet on the east. The height that I went through just my inventory and looked at the heights of the homes that were occurring on Shoreline, and I've got 1631 Shoreline at 24 feet, 1607, 24.6, 1553, 21, 1547, 25. So there's 22s, there's more 23, there's a 27.4, there's a 22. So ours at 25.7 is on the higher side of that. What helps us is that, again, I mentioned earlier in the meeting that we're dropping the existing grade down a foot, so it really feels more like a 24/7 height to it, but that's kind of important. That was one of the areas. The owners were just willing to really just listen to the comments from the last meeting, but that's one area that they kind of really wanted to look at. Back to the drawings. So the front elevation, so we've got a simulated wood siding, non-combustible. We've got composition shingles. The idea of the house is to create a little bit of a Miramar type of a feel to it. Again, it's set back 60 plus feet from the front, and you'll get just little views of it as you're on Shoreline. Right now, you can't see anything into the property because of that high wall. Excuse me.
4 minutes.
Oh, yes. Okay, so I've got Chris here. Well, I mean, I'm pretty much there. I think that's, I think I'm right on your drawings. But, so these are sections, and I can get into any details, but I want to make sure Chris has got some time.
I don't need much. Okay. Thank you, Tom. So landscape, as Tom just mentioned, the client is a big fan of the Miramar, and we kind of pulled that through with the landscape as well, with sort of the brick and boxwood and this sort of a subtropical planting scheme. So coming in off the roadway, we have a new set of columns and gates and a picket fence out front, and that's 42-inch high. So the client actually wanted, people to see into the site, which to, be more neighborhood friendly, which I think is commendable. In place of the garage that was proposed is just a small orchard, and we have a flagpole here and a little entry fountain. There's another gate off of the sidewalk, existing street treater main. We have kind of a large, medium to large canopy tree over the driveway to help shade that out, but not too high to block views from neighbors across the street. And then some kind of a blue stone tile for the accents leading up to the front door and also around the sides and in the back, sort of a blue stone border and steps with wood decking in the field. Lawn area reduced from the way it is existing, but it's also artificial turf, and there's the bluff top setback line, so everything, south of that has to be native and no irrigation, and so this is all native and also permeable paving. So we have a little outdoor dining area with a barbecue and refrigerator, no sink, and then stepping down a little bit to just sort of an overlook terrace. And as Tom mentioned, the wall gets cut down here. So this landscape just kind of slopes down and planted out with natives for, erosion mitigation. And then obviously privacy hedging on either side. But that is pretty much the landscape. Anything else to add? Okay.
And that concludes our presentation.
All right, thank you very much. Yes, you have
Mr.
any
Chair,
comments from
just,
the city? Yes.
I have one more thing to add. I just wanted to note for your board's consideration, so even though the Glorietta deck has a major structural geo component to it, now would be the appropriate time if there are aesthetic treatments or ideas that you need the applicant to explore. Now is a great time to give those suggestions for the geologist to consider, if it's, lowering this or raising that, or a color or a planting element. Anything that's going to happen on that Glorietta is going to have to be vetted through geo. And we want to have them explore that if there's a strong suggestion. It has to meet visual policies. We still have all our coastal policies, visual. Your board still has, even though we have to live with it in some ways. Now's the time to improve it to the extent we can, and vet that through geo to see if it's something that's feasible to do. So I just wanted to empower your input on that.
All right, thank you. So, public input?
Yes. Ms. Gu, can you please switch to my screen? We received 2 written correspondence on this item, and they were distributed prior to the hearing. For those attending on Zoom who wish to make oral public comment on this item, you can do so at this time by selecting the raise your hand icon. Staff will call on you, and then you can unmute yourself. So while we're waiting for those on Zoom, I did receive 1 speaker slip from Anelli. Please approach the podium, press on the base of the mic. It will light up green. Thanks. And you'll have 2 minutes to speak. If you could formally announce yourself, please.
Hi, I'm Neely Hamasi. Myself.
Is your microphone on?
It looks like it's on. Yeah.
Okay, great, perfect.
Is that better?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great.
I'm the owner at 5 Santa Cruz, which is the property directly to the east of this property. And if you remember the picture where you're looking at the Glorietta, we're just to the right on the bluff, right? So just to say that we have owned the property since December 2019. And what's really unique about our property is that it has very nice ocean views and total privacy, which we paid a real premium for. And our home is a 1,400 square foot single-story structure. So just in summary, the issue we have is that and I think it was mentioned, the property has moved to the east, which has moved towards our side. And so the proposed master bedroom and balcony is overlooking our entire property. And today, nobody's overlooking our property. And we believe will reduce the value of our property. This includes our private courtyard, our entryway, our entire yard, the rooftop, obviously. The house that's being proposed is 8 feet 6 inches away from our property line currently. I was just looking at the Santa Barbara Good Neighbor Design Guidelines, so I'm not sure if these are all appropriate, but in terms of the privacy guidelines, 3 that came up for me that seemed appropriate to this case that didn't seem to be considered was 1, number 6, locate upper story balconies and decks to minimize the loss of privacy for neighboring properties, to avoid direct sight lines from the deck or balcony to the neighbor's windows, open yard, patio deck, or loggia areas. Item 7, set back upper story decks or balconies over 20 square feet, at least 15 feet from interior lot lines when possible. And item 10, minimize the number of windows on proposed buildings that overlook neighboring properties. I don't know if this is relevant, but I have something to mention about the bluff, which the Glorietta. Is it okay for me to
You
bring
can
that
do real
up?
quickly, yeah, please.
Yeah, we have been in consult previously with Adam Simmons, the geologist, and he told us to, so I'm not a geologist, but that removing the structure can also actually really destabilize the bluff.
Right.
So I don't, hopefully that's being evaluated by the geologist.
Yeah, I think they're aware of that, yes, thank you.
Thank you.
I have one more thing, I'm sorry.
At your discretion, Chair Miller, would you?
Regarding the house, or?
Yes,
Okay,
regarding
real
the
quick,
house.
please.
there was an objection by a previous neighbor on the other side.
Yeah.
But the owners of this property have purchased their home. And so my feeling about it is that they have their property that they're building that's just quite large, and the neighbor's property. And so I'm just don't understand why they have to be so close and on top of our property.
Got it, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Gu, do you see any raised hands on Zoom?
And checking on Zoom, I do not see any raised hands for this particular item. Thank you.
Okay, this concludes public comment. Back to you.
All right, thank you. I'll bring it back to the board for questions. Let's see. Board Member Anderson, do you have any questions, please?
A few, just a couple. Melanie, right? Staff, no, sorry.
Megan.
Megan, I was close. So the Glorietta and our preview of code and design, can you help me out with that further?
Sure. So I guess my suggestion would be to look at the design, the changes they're proposing, because that is something they believe they can do, and to see, at least preliminarily, to see if that seems like a good solution in terms of visibility, reducing the visibility of that structure, or softening it, or making it appropriate to the site, and then consider if there's anything beyond that you would suggest in terms of materials, shaping, anything like that, and then those items would be considered by their team and the geologist. Anything beyond what they're proposing. Does that help? No?
Yes and no. I mean, the regulation of building buildings, I mean, it was permitted in the 80s, the building, right? So, but been asked to be removed. So I guess I need to do my own research out of this board meeting on what would be allowed structures at the end of the cliff as such.
So nothing, so there's two, it's a balancing of policies. One policy tells us to remove everything, and then other policies tell us not to destabilize the bluff. So both policies apply, but it's a balancing act between the two. So we're trying to find an improvement that doesn't destabilize the bluff, but that does remove as much as possible, because that's the other goal as well. And so, and that balance has worked out, like I said, a lot with the geo team, but it's also the brainstorming of their designer and everyone to suggest if there's a design solution that is there.
Thank you so much. That helps. So Tom and Chris, I think, can you provide more information on the materials of the Glorietta and landscaping, or just colors, or if any more additional, so we understand how they're going to use it, the railing. I mean, I understand all of that, but if you could spend a little more time on that, that would be great.
Sure, yeah. So our focus to date has been on the physical mass that's there. And it's been tricky because we've got civil engineer and structural engineer and a geologist all working together trying to decide what we can do. So where we are at this point is we've decided on a physical form that we think is going to work with everybody. And this is a 3D image of that physical form. So that consists of a surface that's going to remain right here. It consists of the ability to cut that wall back down along this back side, and maintaining some kind of a guardrail here, which we're proposing, that's currently there. And it's the image here will give you an idea. There it is right there. It's pretty transparent, right? And then down below, the space down below, we really can't touch that space, the lower level you see down here, because that's integral to the structure itself. So, this is the physical form that we're looking to retain. Now, in terms of the color, when we come back, we'll have more time to really look and see what, maybe a taupe or something. And Chris is, right now we're getting our application deemed complete. We're responding to the city's comments and to all of our consultants. But I think with any kind of traction, a form of this will ultimately prevail in terms of the resulting form of the Glorietta.
I would just add that I think this also helps by sloping down with the views from the house and opening those up more as they want unobstructed views. But also, if you notice on our site plans that there is no access down, so the client they don't want to use this structure. They're worried about the danger of it. And I think if they had their druthers, it would all come out and it would be restored back. So they're doing what they can to minimize the impact while, maintaining the structural integrity of the slope.
Yes, it's fortunate from our perspective that the owners don't want to retain it, which is really, it's a win so now we're just trying to come up with what regulations we have for everyone to combine on that same desire.
Thank you. That's my only question.
All right, Board Member Arkelian, do you have any questions, please?
I do. Excuse me if I didn't hear this, but I wanted to confirm that we're pending the geologist's findings for the terrace and regarding.
Yeah, so we have a lot of preliminary geology work that we've done to date through a previous application and this geology team as well. But that geology assessment will continue to evolve with the project, right? So we need, it also affects the house design. So it being just a bluff top lot in general, even if we didn't have the structure to deal with, we would still be dealing and addressing geo policies. Any new, the landscaping like the applicant mentioned, irrigation, all that needs to be reviewed by geologists when you're dealing with the bluff top lot. So even if we had this design locked in today, what you guys want to see, they would still need to button that up prior to Planning Commission. So it's not buttoned up now. Geology also has to look at drainage, utility location, landscaping, irrigation, stormwater, a number of things that happen on a bluff top lot. So does that kind of clarify where we're at?
Perfect. Yeah, thank you. Thanks for restating. To the applicant, wanted to confirm plate heights
Yes.
again. Yeah.
Plate heights, so we have, I'll go to the building section here. As I mentioned previously, one of the very important goals is to create a high ceiling for the first floor predominantly. And so we've got, let's just go to it. It is a 10-foot ceiling on the first floor. And then we've got a combination of 8 and 9 foot plates on the second floor. And the reason we're looking at that is sort of twofold, is we're pulling it in from the sides, the side setbacks. It's pushed well back from the street, and the house itself is the elevation of the house is dropped a foot from the current grade. So that's our desire, and it's a little higher than the typical home trending on shoreline, but the size of this parcel and the setbacks we're proposing are more. So we feel it's in balance with the neighborhood.
So, given that comment, that response, do you have the building heights of the houses to the east and the west? Or not the east because that's a one-story, but to the west is a two-story,
That's
correct?
517 shoreline, and I have that. It's 517 shoreline. It's 22 feet. Yeah.
Okay.
All right, Board Member Klein, do you have any questions, please?
Yes, you mentioned Miramar as the inspiration for the architecture. Is there any other inspiration in the neighborhood that makes this compatible as far as style that you could point to?
Yes, there are. So this would be kind of a East Coast beach wood clap siding kind of a feel to it with a little colonial. And there are several homes that are like that on shoreline. It's kind of what's nice about that style is you can inject a little bit of a contemporary, clean detailing to it, and it holds up well. 1631 shoreline was just completed with a similar vocabulary. But yes, it's, and 1218 came before you recently, and that was of a similar vocabulary. But I think what's nice about that style is it's not really contemporary, and it's not a real heavy Mediterranean. It's kind of a good, kind of a beach character that I think has a solid thread throughout the mesa now.
Also, could you point to windows and decks and talk maybe about the landscape as far as screening, how you looked at that to be considerate with your neighbors?
Yes, so this is, I'm glad the neighbor to the east spoke up. I was hoping to hear something maybe in the first meeting, but I do understand that concern, and we've got a 17-foot bed wall that's abuts that property. So I'm looking at that east elevation right now here, and I think I want to address that for the privacy concerns and possibly even the plate on that. But I'm glad that comment came up, and this is 9 feet from the property line, and I think there's an opportunity to be more sensitive there on that side. I think on the west side, you know, we responded to the comments we had from the last meeting on the west side, and so we maybe took that too seriously and pushed the building back from that west property line 6 feet further, which put it at 20 feet. So, you know, we've got, you know, the idea here is to try to get some views from the first and second floor across the south side of the property and still be sensitive to neighboring views and the scale of the house relative to the property size. Chris, did you have any comments on the landscaping? in terms of,
I mean, you know, I think we are adding a hedge along that eastern property line with an 8-foot max, and I think that we can, if we agree with the neighbor, we can keep that hedge growing to address some of that concern as well.
So that would be this hedge here?
Correct, yeah. And there's an existing site wall, I believe, also along that property boundary, which will help with sound from the first story. And so the second story, there's also that you can see a series of palms.
So these palm trees are existing there, and those, that would be, let's zoom in on this. That would be along this, it's pushed back, so
Yeah.
it would be, this structure is well forward of where the proposed structure will be. So that would be back here further, which is a ways from the main portion of the residence, it looks like.
Another opportunity might be to actually plant a few more palms along on our side, you know, where that second floor balcony is, in order to help
Yeah.
further privatize. Palms aren't the most, you know, opaque vegetation, but we can't put a 20-foot hedge in there, so we'll do what we can, work together with Tom on solutions for that.
And then the west side, can you just briefly go over that? A similar hedge?
Yeah, similar. Mm-hmm.
And then last question is the decks, are they 15 feet from the property line or?
No, the deck on the east side is 9 feet from the property line. And the thinking there is that it occurs right above this structure's pulled, you can see that structure's pulled right up to it. And let's take a look at the floor plan on that, the depth. This is so it's just off the master bedroom, and it's this deck right here. It's 9 feet from that easterly property line.
Do you have a Google Earth or something where I could see the neighboring house?
Yes, so right here, so that would be, I might have a drone shot that might be a little better. Let's see, maybe from a higher angle. This is not bad. So that would be right in this area here, would be where that deck would be.
Okay, thank you. Those are all my questions.
Can I see the site plan, please?
Yes.
question with that other thing, but, yeah, the site plan.
Close, here we go.
And so the top one is the footprint of the original house?
Yes, the top one is the footprint of the original house.
So the footprints on the north and south side of the property are pretty much matching what was existing, right? In terms of the getting on the edge of the property lines on the north and south?
Right, so this north side of the existing residence is a little further south than the proposed facade of the north facade of the proposed. Was that the question?
The width of the new house is pretty much the same width of the existing house.
The width, yes, the width of the new house is pretty much the same as the width
Okay.
of the existing.
Now, there was another section of the, whatever you call that thing in the back, I was curious.
The Glorietta?
Glorietta. Sorry. Well, I didn't know what that other word was, so, yeah, keep going. It was a weird thing. I'm just curious. Next, there, yeah, see where that guy is standing? It's like a well. What is this on the section 2?
Oh, yes,
What
okay.
is that? What's going on
Good-
there?
Good question. So, there is a shaft, and it's right here. This right here is a vertical shaft for drainage, and we're studying using that for our stormwater right now.
Oh.
So basically, what we're gonna do is we'll fit that in. It's existing, and it means that we won't have to construct anything further there, but we've got our current stormwater design is to utilize that as the intake for the lower level, and then we can get all the water. It's really a blessing. We can get down below the Glorietta, capture anything that goes down there, keep it from going over the bluff, and then pump it back to the cisterns up in front.
Wow.
So it's fortunate.
Okay, those were my only questions, so I'll bring it back for comments. Board Member Anderson, do you have comments, please?
This goes so fast. Thank you. Documents are clear. It makes it so easy for the review. Thank you for your submittal. I think that, to me, the FAR at the 87 is appropriate for the site. So thank you for that. I just would like to see pictures included in the set, so when I review it before I come, that's always helpful. And you always do such a great job at the street silhouettes, so we can see neighborhood compatibility with the colonial and the height. So next time you come with that and the adjacent neighbors, so we can talk a little bit more about the deck and the position of the two adjacent neighbors and site. It's always helpful to see that. I'm not going to make a comment on the front window of the colonial. But I think, yes, addressing the east neighbor's privacy concern and the scale size. I know you'll address that. But otherwise, great project. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Board Member Eric Kelly, do you have any comments, please?
I do. Want to appreciate all these additional details from the applicant and considering our comments from the last round. Would like to go to the east elevation. Thank you. So, appreciate the applicant bringing up the glazing at the second story master bedroom. I do believe that needs to be reduced or appropriately sized and preferably in coordination with the neighbor and per our good neighbor guidelines. And in terms of I'm looking at the balcony as well. It's pretty, I consider it, when I was looking at the site plan as well, I consider it to be pretty close to, pretty close to that 6-foot setback. I would like for the applicant to consider either part or all of that along the east side of the railing, for there to be, full height or partial height, some kind of cover. Part of it or all of it. just in respect to the neighbor. Again, coordinating with the neighbor would be preferred. Let's see what else. I appreciate the applicant in their presentation. I did see I believe along the west property line, how you tucked back the second story. That's very much appreciated. How I'm looking at the east elevation and how part of it's been tucked back rather than a huge continuous massing along the east elevation. I really like that stepped effect from the front. So that's appreciated. In terms of the terrace and the Glorietta, I understand the comments from staff. There's still some things to unfold with the geologist. I would like to know from the geologist on how much, from their findings, how much they are comfortable, how many square feet of terrace they are comfortable in removing. It's obviously contingent upon what they have to say, but having that terrace extend to the property lines, for our guidelines, I do not believe is aesthetically appropriate and compatible with the neighborhood. I appreciate the current owner's intended use and how they're not planning to use it, but would like to see what the findings are. Would like as much of that removed as possible. But let's see. If it were to remain, though, if some of it or all of it were needed to be remain, I did like from the earlier conversation about an earth tone flat work. Having the color palette blend in as much of the as much as with the landscaping as possible. Brown tone, not giving away like a concrete gray. And then I know, so the applicant mentioned a 25-foot 7 building height. Would like to, I'm in support with board member Anderson's comments about the street silhouette elevation. I'm currently leaning towards going for tucking that in a little bit more to 25 or less if possible, but I would like to see the street elevation first and get a little bit better feel of what's going on in the neighborhood before I more firm about that. Other than that, those are my comments. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Board Member Klein, do you have any comments, please?
Yes, overall, I think this is a nice project that works within our findings of neighborhood compatibility, but I'd like to see those homes you spoke of, just to understand that there is other similar architecture and where those are located. Mass, bulk, and scale, it feels appropriate as far as the FAR and being set back from the street, and it's an improvement with the deck. Aesthetically, I think I'm in support of the modification for the wall heights and the interior setback. I would ask for additional study of that east property line, just if there's anything else you can do to help with privacy. I think additional palms are a nice idea. And those are my comments.
All right, thank you. I love the style of the house, but I don't buy the size, bulk, and scale of it. It's too big. The plate heights are too tall. It's interesting you compare it to a hotel. This is not a hotel, this is a private home. And if it was out on its own, I would totally go for it. I think a 10-foot ceiling would be perfect for the house. But unfortunately, you've got these neighborhood compatibility issues. So I would support a 9-foot ceiling for the first floor and an 8-foot ceiling for the second floor. Make the second floor ceiling volume ceiling to gain height. I would study that balcony in terms of the recommendation that it be 15 feet from the property line. If you're going to keep it there, then it has to be reduced or somehow screened so it doesn't loom over the next door neighbor. Especially those two flat roofed homes. This house is literally looming over those properties. So I think there needs to be a little more respect for that. I think lowering the house plate heights will do a lot to help that. Otherwise, the style's great. And I'm not even going to touch that thing in the back because that's a geological thing that, but I do appreciate what Board Member Arkalian said about it. So those are my comments. Like I said, I won't support this until we get that house, just lower it down to be more compatible with the neighborhood. That's my only major concern with that home. So with those comments, would someone like to draft a motion, please? Oh, are you comments only?
We're looking for
Concept review.
positive comments for the planning commission. So it's possible for some conditions and some concerns.
All right.
If you feel like we can handle that coming back.
Well, I'd like you to come back. I'd like to see like I said, I want to see the plate heights lowered and a little more concern about the privacy issues, especially on the south elevation, I believe, with that balcony. Those are my comments. And what Board Member Arkalian had to say as well in terms of whatever.
Chair Miller, if you could be more explicit for Ms. Gu, please.
Oh, okay, in terms, okay, I'm making a motion, okay. What are you calling that thing again? The Glorietta, to explore possibilities with the request or with the recommendation guidelines of a geologist of reducing the walls so that it was more in line with our design guidelines. Is that kind of saying? And the color to be
Earth tone.
earth tone colors. That's it.
Okay, you stated lower the plate heights and then one additional one to reduce
The upstairs deck,
upstairs
So-
deck. Thank you.
study that so it's more concerned, more closer to our guidelines, more sensitive to the privacy issues of the neighbor. That's the word I want to say.
Are we adding our other items of request for?
Yeah, you were something you forgot.
Okay, yeah. So just the pictures in the set, the street silhouettes, on the site plan, locate the adjacent neighbors so that we can see the relation to the decks and the 1,400
You
square
like a
foot.
street silhouette is what you're asking for.
Well, that, yes, on top of the site plan or a site that would show the adjacent neighbors is always
okay.
super helpful too. The immediate adjacent neighbors, yeah. And then the goal of, like, it's super exciting on architecturally blending the Glorietta in with the bluff, so you don't see it at all.
Okay. Stuff to chew on. Don't write that.
Ms. Anderson, were you seconding that motion?
Yeah, do I have a second, please?
Yes.
Can I have a roll call?
Here we go. Chair Miller,
Yes.
Board Member Anderson,
Yes.
Board Member Killian,
Yes.
and Board Member Klein.
Yes.
Yeah, motion passes. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you. All right, you're welcome. We're running really late. Okay. All right, I will see you Friday.
Fun.
Okay, we're on to item number 3, 903 Alston Road. This is a continued item. Project design approval and final approval is requested. Proposal to demolish an existing wood deck and to construct a new 800 square foot special accessory dwelling unit and new deck located on the Hillside Design District. An existing parking space in the carport is proposed to be assigned to the ADU. Staff hearing officer approval of a front setback modification was granted on August 24th, 2022. The proposed total of 3,910 square feet on a 26,431 square foot lot is 82% of the maximum guideline floor lot area ratio. Project design approval And final approval is requested. Neighborhood preservation findings and hillside design districts and slope lot findings are required. The project was last reviewed on July 8th, 2022. Do we have minutes to read into the record? Okay.
Old plans are here, should we need them? Meeting minutes, I'll go over that, and then here's your specs.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Oh,
Hi.
Okay, here we go. Number 1, the board generally supports the proposed special ADU encroachment into the secondary front setback and the secondary front yard. Given there is substantial relief on the north elevation from the private driveway, the proposed modification does not pose consistency issues with the single-family residence design guidelines. 2, the board is generally in support of the stepped massing and roof lines from the hillside design guidelines standpoint. 3, consider a maximum ceiling height of 10 feet at living areas. 4, study other guardrail styles that have more of a connection with the proposed architectural style.
uh-oh.
Chair Miller, board members, I understand that although we have quorum today with the 4 members, we are not able to take motion for project design approval and final approval, given we need everyone to be able to weigh in and vote by reviewing past meeting minutes and such. So we're able to provide comments on whether we feel we can we can grant PDA and final. We can, sorry to the applicant, we can forward the project to the consent agenda on Monday. Consent agendas happen at 11 a.m.
There you go.
So
Okay.
that's where we're at.
All right, you just answered my slap on the table. Okay, good. So
I'm not sure I understood that, but
it just means we can't give you a motion to grant you final design approval because we don't have a quorum. And I didn't review the minutes either, so I can't even make comments. I can ask you questions, but I can't even make comments. So, yeah, our hands are tied. But it's great that we could put you into the consent.
appreciate that.
So if you could just go through how you address those minutes, and then we'll
Okay.
go from
Yeah,
there.
My name is Richard Redmond. I'm with Edwards and Pittman Architects. And the minutes were fairly simple. What I did was actually went from a wire railing to a wrought iron railing on the building. And then as far as the height, because I'm in love with the way these roofs tie together, I was able to bring it down 6 inches, but no more. So now my height is 10.6 in the living room, but it's barely 8 feet in the wings, the 2 adjacent wings. So that's where I struggle hard to do that, to change that, but just by virtue of the portions of the building being out in front of others, it got real, and in fact, it still gets really tight in that one closet, right in here. So this ends up being an 8-foot plate. So that's basically it. Unless you need to go into more items, the detailing, and we're using an S-tile, and it's apparent when you look at all these pictures that I've included. And then the texture on the wall is pretty distinct. I don't know if you can actually see that from here, but it has this distinct texture that we're going to match. I think all the wood extensions are going to be this green color to match. Doors,
Are
I
those
think we're...
pictures of the house? Is that what those 2 pictures are?
Yes, they are, of the existing house. The doors, I think we're going to go to a kind of a tan, and then this is the color I'd like to use. Unfortunately, I don't have an actual sample. This dark gray on the railing itself. And details, let's give you a typical typical window detail. We're going with a 2x4 wall, so I've pushed the windows back at least 1.5 inches from the face and used a 2x3 as a nailer. And then the doors themselves open outwards, so they're going to be more on the face of the building. Other than that, everything, we have a detail of the railing. We have a drop about 4 inches to that intermediate rail, and then we have a bottom rail that's up 4 inches. It's pretty standard. Overhangs are about 1 foot on the sides and 2 feet on the ends, so that's basically my presentation. That's
Okay, all right, thank you very much. Did we get any public input?
Yes. Chair Miller, board members, we did receive one written correspondence on this item from Jim and Kathy Perry, distributed prior to the hearing. And, Ms. Gu, can you please switch to my screen? Thanks. For those attending on Zoom who wish to make oral public comment on this item, you can do so at this time. Select the raise your hand icon and staff will call on you and you can unmute yourself. And I'm seeing no one in the audience here for oral public comment. So Ms. Gu, do you see any raised hands on Zoom?
But present, we don't have any attendees on Zoom. Thank you.
Okay, we will close public comment. Back to you, Chair Miller.
All right, I'll bring it back to the board for questions. Board Member Anderson, do you have any questions, please?
Hi.
Hi.
Yes. I was trying to figure out what the finished floor heights were, of the ADU versus the house. I think I'm concluding that the ADU might be around 15 feet higher, but do you have that information?
You are probably correct. I know that the wall below is, and I don't have that exact information, but just looking at the elevation, I think you can kind of estimate that we're going to be, that's about a 6-foot wall, and that's another 6 foot of planting, and then another 6 feet, so it could be 15 to 18 feet above that house. And it's due to the slope that's on the existing in the back, and we've tried to partially put it into the existing slope. I think you can see that on the section. So it gets relatively steep in here, so yes, we're substantially above that point.
So that leads me to the next question of, do you have any street elevations of the main house with the ADU and, trying to understand how it's compatible with the adjacent neighbors?
No, I don't, and it's difficult because this is, it sits so far behind the existing house, and I have a substantial slope in the front. I don't even think you'd be able to see the house, the ADU behind it. Because you can see the distance from the front of that house back to the ADU, and from that point, the house is relatively level, including the driveway at that point, but it is substantially above Alston Road. And there is actually a wall down in Alston Road also, but I really don't think you could even see it from the street.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. Board Member Arkalian, do you have any questions, please?
Just wanted to see the color of the railing, or, yeah. That's all I have, thanks.
Okay. Board Member Klein, do you have any questions, please?
No questions.
Only question, the existing house has S tiles, is that right? So you're just matching?
That is correct.
Yeah, okay,
I'm
got it.
just matching it.
So that's my
And
only
we do it with
question.
the booster tile and the S tile.
Yeah.
At the eaves, yeah.
Perfect, got it. All right, bring it back for comments. Board Member Anderson, do you have any comments?
Board Member Anderson and Chair Miller need to
Oh,
abstain
we
from
can,
comments.
so, okay.
Oh,
Board Member Arkalian, do you have any comments, please?
I do. I believe the proposed guardrail design is a major improvement to what was proposed previously at the previous meeting. Believe the project is ready for PDA and final and should be moved to the consent calendar. That's all I have. Thanks.
All right, Board Member Klein, do you have any comments, please?
Just that I agree that it should be forwarded to consent and is ready for PDA and final.
Great, so that's it, right? All right, so when can he come to?
Yes, so we will we will forward the project to the consent hearing on 12/5 this Monday for project design approval and final approval.
Okay.
Apologies again to the applicant team and property owner. Can you pass that along?
Are you the property owner?
No.
Oh, cool, okay. All right, thank you very much. Okay, I believe that's our final item, so I want to conclude our board meeting for today. Thank you very much.
Thank you.